So on to the next section. This constitutional basis for this part is it's based on the Commonwealth legislation and the powers with respect to matters particularly adapted to the government of the nation and cannot otherwise be carried on for the benefit of the nation. So again, it's convoluted because it's for the benefit of the nation, but it cannot be otherwise be carried on for the benefit of the nation. So have I got that wrong? With respect to matters that are peculiarly
means it's unique to one thing.
Adapted to the government of a nation and cannot otherwise be carried on for the benefit of the nation.
So that's pretty much sort of saying that that's actually not for all us dead things. It's only for the controlling fraction.
Right.
It's for the controlling corporation.
Yeah, so that's what, just be mindful of the wording here, guys, and seek out what these things actually mean, because it's quite a large section that we've put in here in these documents when Steve and I were talking today, but we've got the Fair Work information and the criminal code in here. So the additional mentions, it's just in the subsections 2 to 5, its effects is as the reference of part to COVID Act were expressly confined to a reference to COVID Act that was collected or generated for the purpose of quarantine. Part 4 is expressly confined to the reference COVID Act data that was collected to generate using a service of a kind to which paragraph 51V, whatever 51V is, 51, of the Constitution. So postal, telegraphic, telephonic and other like services. And then it goes into this part also has an effect as it is very expressly confined to giving effect of Australia's obligation under the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights done at New York on the 16th of December 66, Acts 23, and in particular Article 17 of the Covenant in relation to COVID Act data. The Covenant is set out in Australian Treaty Series 1980, number 23, 1980, Acts 23, and could in 2020 be viewed in the Australian Treaties Library on Australia website. Guys, if that's of interest to you, please go and have a look.
Well, what I think we've got a number of people here, like there's 15 people here or so, and what you can see with all of these things, it's got little tentacles that spread out, and it's quite possible that you can have an opinion, and some of these little tentacles will modify that opinion or restrict or limit in some way the application of this information. And we've just got to be very careful that we don't get headings and react on headings when you find the body of text under the heading, which is somewhere else, it gives a slightly different story.
Slightly skewed, definitely.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, this is Division 2 that we're going to go into. This is interesting, people. Offences relating to COVID Act data and COVID Safe. The collection, use or disclosure of the COVID Act data. Number 1, a person commits an offence if the person collects, uses or discloses data and the data is COVID Act data and the collection, use and disclosure is not permitted under this section. So what they're saying there is you cannot collect data.
Oh, this is weird.
Exactly, Maureen, exactly. Now, this is where they talk about imprisonment for 5 years or 300 penalty units or both.
Oh,
has anyone had the opportunity?
Because you've got to go to court.
Ah. Has anyone had an opportunity to have a look at what the penalty units, what that comprises of, or what they are? Is it a dollar value for so many, or does each penalty, one penalty, have a dollar value?
Yeah, the penalty units will have a definition because I looked at it before over time and it was going up, but I haven't looked at it
recently
and I can't remember where I found it.
That's all right. Number 2, the collection, use or disclosure is permitted if the person is employed by or in the service of a state or territory health authority, and the collection, use and disclosure is for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of undertaking contact tracing. Or B, number 1, an officer or employee of the data store administrator. Or number 2, a contracted service provider for a government contract with a data store administrator, and the collection, use or disclosure of for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of, number 3, enabling contact tracing by persons employed by or in the service of state or territory health authorities. And number 4, ensuring the proper functioning, integrity and security of COVID Safe or of the National COVID Safe data store. This is the first time I'm hearing about a store or administrator of this data. So where is this being held? Part C. In the case of collection or disclosure of the COVID Act data, the collection or disclosure is for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of 1, transferring encrypted data between communication devices through COVID Safe, or transferring encrypted data through COVID Safe from a communication device to a national COVID Safe data store. So what are they doing? It's national, they're collecting data on you. D, the collection or use or disclosure is for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of the Commissioners performing the function of exercising or power of the Commission under or in relation to this part. I don't know that I trust that. However, E, the collection, use or disclosure is for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of investigating whether this part has been contravened or prosecuting a person for an offence against this part, or lots of ors here, guys.
God.
F, in the case of the use of COVID Act data by the data store administrator, the use is for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of producing de-identified statistical information about the total number of registrations through COVID Safe.
Okay, so now while you're there, one of the things that's interesting is, which I've read through and I can't remember what part, we might get to it, but you can actually use a pseudonym. You don't have to use your name with things.
Right.
So,
Well,
but at some point it's linked to you, but so that other people aren't aware, you can use a pseudonym.
right.
So that would come in there as well.
I think so.
Into that area there that you're just talking about.
Yeah.
So of producing de-identified statistical information about the total number of registrations through COVID Safe.
Yeah.
So Mickey Mouse.
That's interesting. Pseudonyms.
That's what they say. But at some point you do have to have that pseudonym linked to your birth certificate information.
Oh, so the dead entity information. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's got your, well, we know what that is. Like your name. At some point, somewhere, it's got to be linked to the name.
Yep. Okay. G. In the case of the use of COVID Act data, that the data store administrator is required by Section 94L to delete. The use consists of access by the data store administrator for the purpose of and only to the extent required for the purpose of confirming that the correct data has been deleted. So when we get down to 94L.
Now, one thing that I'd suggest to you too, with all these titles and the different people that are in there, like this is their legislation, which we're sort of pretending, put that in inverted commas, we're pretending that it's real for the purpose of what we're doing, because it's what they're looking to apply. But if we're looking to pull it back ourselves, when they're saying these people have got the right to look at it, a data store administrator, did that position come about from legislation that's traceable back to the Constitution? No, it didn't.
No,
So
correct.
none of these things that they're saying they can do with these people are valid because the positions aren't valid. They can't be valid because of when they came into being. So, and that's something just to keep in the back of your mind. But this is a means to an end. It's like when I talk about being in the belly of the beast and we've got to cut our way out. So it means we have to come into contact with the beast. This is how we're in contact with the beast, using their legislation against them. So they can't deny it, that it's there, or they can't go, oh, that's all gobbledygook. Oh, well, they can. Well, that'd be fine too, because it still wouldn't apply to you.
Yeah.
So that's why we've got to make sure that there's, when it refers to some other sections off the side, that those things don't change the state of play, that it doesn't turn it on its head.
Yeah, that's the purpose of it, definitely. Okay. Right, number 3, subsection 1 does not apply to the collection of the COVID app if 1A, the collection of the COVID app data, 1, occurs as part of a collection at the same time the data that is not COVID app data, non-COVID app data, and 2, it is incidental to the collection of the non-COVID app data. What the hell is that doing in there? Because it doesn't make sense. When I say it doesn't make sense, if it's not to be collected or not to be used, why are we collecting it to start with?
Well, it's just an accident. We didn't mean to, but that's why we also put it in italics inside brackets.
Yeah.
And we also changed the case. So what we've done is we've removed it. It's not there, and just in case we were wrong about that, we've removed it twice.
Yeah.
So what you've got to do is you've got to go back and have a look, because we're talking subsection 1, which is up above, does not apply to the collection of COVID app data if the collection of the COVID data, app data, occurs as part of the collection at the same time of data that is not COVID app. So if they get information about the COVID app data, but they were actually asking you for your license, for argument like that, then it doesn't apply.
How do we know that the license isn't connected to the COVID app data?
You don't.
Oh.
Sorry, Maureen.
Somebody here, why do people keep bringing up things where they're trying to look for facts? It doesn't apply. There's no facts apply in this matter. Could you imagine going through school writing crap like this and you take it to your English teacher and they go, no, you failed.
Yeah.
Failed. That makes no sense at all. Like, this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Oh.
And then these people are supposed to be people that you look up to, solicitors and lawyers and all the rest of it, and they write this crap. Like, just to keep themselves employed, to tell you, we can't work out what it is we wrote, but we'll go and have a meeting about it. And by the way, I'm $500 an hour.
Oh, I wish. Yes. Okay.
So can we just have I'll just go back up to subsection 1.
Yeah.
So that we can try and put that into perspective as to what, so subsection 1 does not apply if all that rubbish. So subsection 1.
Subsection 1.
Is that subsection 1? A person commits an offence if the person collects, uses or discloses. So if they accidentally get your COVID data while they were looking for something else, they haven't committed an offence.
So it's covering the person who's collecting the data.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the data is covered up. The collection is.
Small business will carry the load again.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret it too, Maureen.
Yeah.
Because it's taking all the onus off the government and giving it to the person or the business that is taking or making the collection of the data.
Yeah. So they can get the bum suit off them, and the government walks away scot-free.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. That's how I see it too. So how do we know that they're not using small business as agents?
They are.
They are.
Oh, right.
So that they're not liable.
So they're actually in this legislation.
They have
employed, maybe even paid by government to collect data.
You're usually not paid, but we won't fine you if you do it.
We'll let you stay open if you participate.
That's what it appears to be, Maureen.
Yeah.
It's vicarious liability.
Uh-huh.
Okay, number B or beep and number 3 is the collection of non-COVID app data is submitted under an Australian law, and C, the COVID app data is deleted as soon as practical after a person becomes aware that it has been collected and is not otherwise accessed, used or disclosed by the person after it was collected. Well, the person can't collect it, can they? The person can't use it, only the administrator of that information.
Huh.
Is that right? That's how I read that.
Yeah, but note, a defendant bears an evidential burden in relation to the matters in this subsection, see subsection 13.3 of the Criminal Code.
A defendant.
Right.
But you've got to provide the evidence
Yep.
to satisfy any of these questions. So, for argument's sake, you would have to prove that you deleted stuff.
Fair work.
Which is like proving a negative. That's pretty hard. Like
That's
if you've got the data you weren't entitled to get.
Yeah.
It's like when you put a net in the sea and you're catching salmon or you're catching tuna, but you hook some sharks and dolphins and whatever. You've got to get rid of them.
That is where that comes into it. Yeah. So if we can go on to 5. Everyone's happy with where we're at the moment? The app data relating to that person has been collected or generated, including in the commencement of this part through the operation of COVID Safe, and be either the registration data, or part 2 is stored or has been stored, including before the commencement of this party, or a communication device.
On a communication device.
On a communication device. However, it does not include the information obtained from a source other than directly from the National COVID Safe Data Store in the course of undertaking contract tracing by a person employed by or in the service of a state or territory health authority, or de-identified statistical information about a total number of registrations through COVID Safe that is produced by an officer or employee of the data store administrator, or a contracted service provider for a government contract with the data store administrator. Wow. What I hear and see there, guys, is there's a number of people that will come in contact with the information that you provide to them. They have to, it is, according to this, it's not retained, it is deleted or destroyed. I don't know how you can destroy it, because once it's put in black and white or on paper or in a, it'll be scanned and copied somewhere, you can guarantee it.
Nothing goes away.
Nothing, once it's on paper, nothing goes away.
No.
Okay. Number 6, contact tracing is the process of identifying persons who have been in contact with a person who has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19.
Coronavirus is COVID-19. They're saying it right there.
That's right, and that's probably the first time I've seen coronavirus written in the Privacy Act anywhere. It's in this section.
For goodness sake.
Yep. Where have you gone,
Top here
Steve?
somewhere too.
Oh yeah.
There.
Oh yes, it's too.
But see, known as.
Yep.
So you know, known as Bluey. His name's Brian Jones, but he's known as Bluey.
Yeah.
Because he's got orange hair, which never made sense.
Correct. Okay. So notifying a person, so number A in number 6 is notifying a person that the person has been in contact with a person who has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19, and B, notifying a person who is a parent, guardian or carer, or another person that the other person has been in contact with a person who has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19.
Okay, so now on that point, this is when you've got to give up about saying COVID-19 isn't a thing, because it's not saying coronavirus identified as COVID-19. It's saying known as,
known as.
right? So it's not saying, it's just saying we're calling it that. It's serious, it's just literally saying we're calling it that. It hasn't been identified as COVID-19, it's known as.
Yeah.
So you can't argue that COVID-19 isn't a thing because they're not saying it is a thing. They're just saying it's known as.
Yeah.
Oh, convoluted, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, C is providing information and advice to a person who, 1, has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19, or is a parent, guardian, or carer of another person who has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19, or 3, has been in contact with a person who has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19, or 4, is a parent, guardian, or carer of another person who has been in contact with a person who has tested positive for the coronavirus known as COVID-19. So they've covered every angle there to make sure that they've got sufficient evidence to make sure they've got your details. Now, 94E, the app data on communication devices. A person commits an offence if a person uploads or causes to be uploaded data from a communication device to a national COVID data store, and the data is COVID app data, and the consent to the upload has not been given by 1, the COVID safe user in relation to that device, or if the COVID safe user is unable to give consent, a parent, guardian, or carer of the COVID safe user, or if the COVID safe user has requested a parent or guardian or carer of the COVID safe user to act on the COVID safe user's behalf, that parent, guardian, or carer. The penalty is imprisonment of 5 years or 300 penalty units, or both. So this section here is that you'd have to give consent. You cannot be forced to put that data on your phone. You must give consent.